Testing 1, 2, 3. Mixing, mixing, mixing. Titanium white, Naples yellow, tiny bit of Indian yellow. Let's see now if that looks like the right color. Yep. All right, hello friends. Thanks for joining me again. Let me do just a few more strokes and see if I like what I'm doing here, and then decide whether to proceed. Yeah, I think that'll do. All right, let's get official. Hello, my name is Dan Nelson, and I'm in my upstairs studio on a nice, beautiful day for being indoors. 40 degrees and rainy out there. This is Daily Art Adventure, nearly finishing my 3rd year. Started on January 1st, 2017 on Facebook. I'll be adding Facebook back in here very shortly. But anyway, Daily Art Adventure number 789, final edit in quotes, final edit layer. Final edit in quotes because I call it the final edit, but it is no longer the final edit because I do other layers after this. Be that as it may, it's still a good description. And it's pretty obvious where I had to start on this painting. That is at the lightest, brightest, whitest part of the painting and the focal point, which is certainly here, the sun coming through the trees. Here is the photograph that I'm working from. I moved it over here. I'm going to move it again. Moved it here so I can get a little bit closer to it. Really, really want to see my photo reference. The titanium white that I'm using is alkyd. Fast, it just means it's an oil paint with an alkaline drying agent in it, so-called alkyd oil. Several different companies. Let me see if I can grab mine for you. Not sure, I guess I can't. A bit of a reach. There we go. Okay, so this is Winsor Newton Griffin alkyd. If you know anything about oil painting, then you know that the color that the tube of paint that artists go through the most conventionally, typically, is titanium white, or white anyway, whether it's titanium or alkyd or whatever. I mean, whether it's titanium or zinc or whatever. Anyway, and I am no exception to that rule, in spite of the fact that, now just, if you ignore this just for a minute and look at my entire painting, and you're getting a lot of glare up there, sorry. But other than that, you're seeing a fair representation of the painting. Look how finished the painting appears, when in fact, until just now, I've not used any of the oil painter's ubiquitous, most traditional, most used white. The point is, the point that I'm trying to make is my paintings are amazingly finished, values and color and so forth, without having any, till now, without having any titanium white or any white in them. In other words, white in the acrylic stage, right, a couple of times. So that's anything that's light, I'm saying light with an L, anything that's light value in this painting right now. It's light because of those 3 layers of titanium. No, I'm sorry. Because of those 3 layers of acrylic white. I'm sorry. Again, so often when I'm painting and talking at the same time, my painting and talking brain stumbles over itself. And it's slightly more important that my painting brain be engaged. I can talk and paint at the same time, but I can't do both well. So many times talking smoothly goes out the window because I'm trying to keep my painting brain from making any really stupid mistakes. Anybody ever made any really stupid mistakes? Man, I make them on a regular basis. My local painters group will attest to that. I'll put up what is otherwise a really beautiful painting, and then somebody will point to something like really stupid, like month before last. Like, that man's arm is too long. I looked at it, it's like, what was I thinking? It was crazy. It was the painting was leaning against the wall behind us over there. Anyway, I amaze myself at my ability to make really stupid mistakes. So once again, I used to call this my final edit layer. I'm sorry, I still call it that. This in fact used to be the final edit layer, that I would finish the painting at the end of this step. Now I have a handful of more phases or stages that I'd go through, and they're easy to describe to you. One is, and again, until I become a better painter, some of these phases perhaps should be amalgamated into one step instead of 2, but until I'm able to do that, I'm just better off keeping it as 2 separate steps. So one of them, the next step often after this, is broken color, which I come in and put in bits of color that match the value. Value is lightness, darkness, okay? So the same lightness, darkness, but a very different and very often a contrasting color. So for instance, very typical in that regard would be in green foliage, of which there's a lot in this painting. In green foliage, I would do red, different shades of red. Does that make sense? Okay, we have I'm going to leave the pale yellow light shining through the trees for a minute, just so it's a good idea not to just do all of one thing. It's a good idea to jump around a little bit. Because all of us, our brushwork meanders, migrates, evolves, changes slightly from minute to minute, hour to hour. And so if you, that's another reason why, generally speaking, you shouldn't start at one corner of your painting and move across this way, because if it takes you like 3 hours to go across, your hand, the way you handle the brush and so forth will change during those 3 hours. So it's a good idea to move around in a painting and do different things and then come back. So I'll come back to this pale yellow stuff in a while. I've just turned my brushes, turned the color of my brushes to a very bright spring green. I'm using decorator names now. I'm not using painter words when I say spring green. Bright chartreuse, maybe a little bit too yellow to be a true chartreuse. I don't know. And again, those are decorator names. They're not artists' names, so you can call them whatever you want. There's an important bit of lawn grass visible through the trees here that I want to go ahead and lay in quickly. I think that this is the 13th layer on this painting. I'm mixing up now. I pulled up a chromium oxide green, I think it was. And don't take notes on this. I guess I'll let you watch me since I might be mixing for a minute. The reason I tell you don't take notes is because generally speaking, you don't want to learn to mix color by recipe, by somebody else's. Oh, I'm done. That's the color I want. You don't want to mix colors by somebody else's recipe, generally speaking. You can learn stuff, but most of the time, when it comes to mixing color, you mix by eyeball. It's like the difference between a, if you will, forgive me, I don't want to be offensive to anybody, but it's sort of like the difference between being a good cook and a good chef. And I am neither one, so forgive me, I'm outside of my area. I want something slightly darker than that. So let's warm that up with some yellow and darken it with some raw umber. Hello, Ken X. Thanks for speaking up, my friend. He says, thank you for teaching. I do learn from you. It gets harder for me to let go of pride and ego with age. Later in life, early journey painter. Good for you, Ken. And welcome to the clan, man. You're not the only one. You're not the only one who's late in life, early journey painter. Bless you. You prompt out of me one of my oft-stated rants, if you will, friendly rant in this case, that what is the real objective, again, for most people, the great majority, 1,000 to 1, I would think, why do people paint and why should people paint? And the answer is for their own good, for their own amusement, for their own personal development, for fun. That's why most people paint and why most people should paint. And if it was fun, that's good enough. So good for you. Just keep at it. As long as you're having fun, that is the main thing. And part of the fun, of course, without saying, because as human beings, whoops, that looks like, this is, it looked like one branch off the pine tree, and that is not the case. As human beings, we also, part of fun is improving, seeing improvement. So way to go. Doesn't matter where you're at in your journey. Forgive the grammar. Doesn't matter where you're at in your journey. If you're making progress, you're probably having more fun. So I hope I can just be a part of your making progress process. Making progress process. That'll be good enough for me. So I'm painting now with a very, very mid-tone, very dull gray, neutral, like a number 5 on a gray scale, right in the middle, and quite a dead gray. I will certainly come back and do some lighter stuff on top of what I just did. In fact, I wonder if I should do it. No, in a minute. I'll do it in a minute. I was going to say, I wonder if I should do that right now. Okay, so a little bit about painting trees. Because I'll tell you one thing I am doing right now is I'm being very intentional. I'm using an opaque, pretty opaque, and for me, quite an opaque color. Not many times when I use the word opaque in the final edit, I say opaque, but I'm actually applying the paint thinly enough that I'm actually applying, I'm actually producing a translucent layer. Well, a lot of what I'm doing right now is quite opaque. Okay, and I was going to say, before I so rudely interrupted myself, that I'm being very intentional to paint foliage, leaves, bunches of leaves, foliage, in front of stems, stalks, trunks, branches. Does that make sense? My approach to paint, this is pretty typical of my approach to painting trees. I want to give the impression, and again, here's the photo reference up close that my friend Buddy sent to me. And as you can see in here, just, I haven't counted them, but hundreds of trees, little tiny saplings, you know, no bigger than your thumb. Dozens of them. And then all the way up to, of course, there's 2 really big trees, and then everything in between. Hundreds of trees, literally hundreds. And you want to give the impression, you don't want to paint hundreds of trees. Good grief, what a waste of, you know, that is, you've, in my opinion, that's not real painting. If you're painting hundreds of trees, painstakingly, stroke by stroke, branch by branch, that is not good painting. It might be hyper-realism, but it's not good painting. So you want to give the impression, which I think I have accomplished. And one of the ways I have accomplished that, is, as you saw, I just took brushes and pencils and everything, and just went blah, 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 like 2 hands, just blah, 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 blah. You know, I have, again, hundreds, I would think, of branches depicted up here. But then the mistake, the error in doing that, but I'm fixing the error now, so it wasn't anything seriously dangerous. But the error in doing that would be that all the branches are on top of the green, and that's completely unconvincing. That the viewer goes, that's not what trees look like, because in many cases, like here's the biggest example right up here. Right, so this foliage going in front of that pine branch. And by the way, one of the final strokes I imagine I will do, in fact, I'll do one right now just for fun. I think that I will probably use the blade of a palette knife and do, it's too early for this right now, but I just want to go ahead and demonstrate it to you. I'll do a hint of pine needles. Of course, that's way too much detail to go over a large area, but there will be just little bits of that everywhere. No, let me say that again. There will be little bits of that here and there, not everywhere. There'll be little bits of like individual leaves painted. All right, so back to the mistake, if you will, is it's not really a mistake because I knew I was going to do it all along, but I am being very intentional about, again, painting foliage on top of these branches and trunks, twigs, and so forth. All right, makes sense? I probably beat that horse to death, didn't I? Anyway, and I'm being very careful about where I'm placing, where I'm placing foliage in front of the trunks, in front of the branches. All right, that's all. Just wanted to point out that I was being very intentional about that. That's enough. Enough. Let's just... Hello, Monique. Good to have you with us. You also started taking painting lessons late in life. Welcome. All you late life painters, good for you. I sincerely hope to be an encouragement to you. I started painting late in life, well, not late, 45, nearly 44 years old, but that don't be deceived. That's quite disingenuous. What I mean is I did my first oil painting at about age 44, but that's quite misleading because I was a full-time professional artist for decades before that. I just did everything but oil painting. So for me to say, oh yeah, I started painting at age 45. Yeah, no, it doesn't quite count. But it was late in life, I mean, for a full-time artist. I remember so clearly when I first started doing oil paintings, I had a number of surprises. The first surprise was how sticky oil paint was. Like, wow, it's like honey. Because I was used to watercolor, gouache, a little bit of acrylic, ink, pen and ink and stuff. And it just seemed really sticky to me. Also, I was surprised how easy it was. It's like, wow, you don't even have to think with this stuff. It just paints itself. Slight exaggeration, I know. But that's the way it felt to me at the time. Wow, why didn't anybody tell me this was so easy? Because I've been struggling with the hard stuff like watercolor for decades at that point, airbrush. That was about 1999, so yeah, I guess I was 45. How old does that make me now? You do the math. I'll be 66 in 2 months. Never been happier. I'm extremely blessed. There is no question. Got a wife who loves me, and I love her. I could go on and on and on about how blessed I am. It's all a gift. It's all a gift. I can take no credit for any of it. You can be thankful for it, though. All right, now what I'm doing is I've mixed up a lighter green, and I'm coming back and doing light on top of the mid-tone green that I did just a few minutes ago. All right, another quick lesson about painting forest, or a bunch of trees in particular. I don't think I got into this when I taught my tree class about 3 or 4 weeks ago at Art of the Carolinas. I was about how to paint trees, and I did get into how to paint forests. But two things, and one, here we go again. One of them I learned from my quote unquote good friend, Thomas Kincaid. You guys, some of you guys, you're going to think, oh man, he's a real Thomas Kincaid lover. Well, no, not really, not exactly. When he, first time I saw his stuff, which was in the mid-90s, I think I was kind of blown away and intrigued like most people. It wore off a little bit too quickly, but after, you know, year after year after year, it's the same stuff. Be that as it may, as I said, I paid attention to stuff, and I picked up a lot of good tips. And I don't need to defend myself. My technique is so manifestly abstract realism. That is, that the abstract elements are paramount over the realism elements. Thomas Kincaid was the other way around, right? The realism was paramount over the abstract. So I don't need to defend myself, but I certainly did learn some things. Here's one of the things I learned by looking at his paintings. Anytime you have a forest of trees, and of course, usually it wasn't inside a forest like this, but it was a hillside, you know, a hill or a mountain covered with thousands of trees, right? Here's the trick I learned from him. Make different trees different color. He would have one tree that, like, let's say they're all green, but one is brownish green, bluish green, yellowish green, reddish green, orangish green, greenish green, bluish green. And it was very effective in portraying a hillside of trees. And that's a lesson. Again, I probably observed that in Thomas Kincaid painting in about 1996 and filed it away, and I have never forgotten it. But so the same thing is true here. In fact, in this regard, my photograph is quite inadequate. The greens are very monochromatic. It's a lot of the same greens throughout. And in that regard, then my photograph is a bad. Nothing wrong with the photograph, buddy. That's not my point. Just, you can't trust cameras when you're a painter. You don't believe cameras. Anyway, so I am going to try to make sure that I have different colors going in and out of this painting. I haven't really started that yet. Right now I'm just sort of doing a general green. But as the painting develops, I will do bluish green, yellowish green, purplish green, brownish green, lighter, of course, lighter and darker and lighter and darker. So okay, so that's tree lesson number 1. Tree lesson, especially if it's a bunch of trees, lesson number 2. And again, I learned this. I was doing a big painting, 8 by 10 foot painting, in downtown Raleigh on my big rig, painting a forest, a hillside covered with forest. And I discovered that I was making a mistake. It's like, ooh, you know what? That doesn't work very well. You know, one of those kind of moments, like, ew. So I had time to fix it because I was still working on the painting. The mistake is very, very simple. And I see others that haven't learned this trick yet, so I'll share it with you gladly. The mistake was too high of a contrast, too high of a degree of contrast in my foliage. That is to say, like I've already done in many places here, I have some leaves that I want to look like they're in the shade, and some leaves are being hit by the sun, right? So they're sunny leaves and shady leaves. And the mistake I was making that distinction too extreme. So when I narrowed it down, so I'm trying to do here is a narrowed down. I'm trying not to make that mistake that I made in 2004 is when I learned that lesson. So dial back the contrast, and it'll look more believable, more natural. So there you go. There's 2 lessons about trees. Number 1, dial down the contrast, and number 2, if there's a bunch of trees, make the various trees different colors. Your eye will believe the painting, like, ooh, that looks realistic, which of course is a big part of what you want in a painting, right? Okay, I'm going to wipe off. Hello, Daniel Ding. Thanks for speaking up. Daniel says, I spent too much time just to mimic the so-called photorealistic, but those details doesn't have to be all the same. And that's the photo. That is exactly correct. Thank you for noticing. Hello, Mick. I would love to visit. Yes, if we could just... I'm planning to visit Sydney. Oh, that'd be fun. I would love to visit Sydney. Let's see what we can do. All I need is a couple of art classes, a couple of painting classes, back-to-back weekends, 15 students each. I can send you the rest of the specifications, you know, just enough to cover my trip down there. My wife and I will come in a heartbeat. That would be so much fun. I love traveling. All right, I've just mixed up a pale green, and I'm not sure it's the right color. I suspect it's not, so I'm going to add some yellow ochre to this. I want it more orange, a more orangey green. To that effect, I'm going to add some orange to it. There we go. Now we're getting. In the final edit layer. Okay, let me define what the final edit layer is. And what makes it, in fact, the final edit layer is this. This is it's the first time in oils that I'm painting with opaque paint. Now, if you were with me yesterday, the last 2 days, and earlier today, in the acrylic, this painting starts out in acrylics, okay? I did several layers of white acrylic and then did glaze on top of them. And on this painting, I did a little bit of colored opaque, a little bit. And that's cheating my system, because my normal system is in the acrylics, no opaque colors, just white overglazed with a color to create the color. But of course I did, as I said, I did cheat a little bit. So what makes this the final edit layer, quote unquote, is that I'm painting really for the first time with opaque paint, opaque colors. I know I'm belaboring that point, but that's really important. Most oil painters influenced by the 20th century paint very opaquely. Most oil painters of my generation, and those just older and just younger, most oil painters paint more or less opaque, straight out of the tube paint. Even Richard Schmid, whom I adore, He says, you know, straight out of the tube, don't use any medium. That's my Richard Schmid voice, just in case you wondered. He won Mr. Congeniality one time at a art festival. Never mind. So he paints straight out of the tube, and again, that's how most children of the 20th century paint. They paint straight out of the tube. Okay, and I do not. So again, if you had to have one word to pigeonhole me, what's Dan Nelson? What's that about? What does he do? Okay, the one word would be transparent. There's a bunch of other weird stuff that I do, but if you were limited to one word, the word would have to be transparent, all right? But at the final edit layer, this is what makes it the final edit layer. I'm painting essentially with opaque paint. I don't talk very well, do we? I'm painting with opaque. And that's what makes it the final edit layer, because with opaque paint, of course, you can cover up stuff. And that's what 3 cheers for covering stuff up. That's what, you know, that's what makes most oil painters and acrylic choose to paint in oil and acrylic, is you can cover up stuff. All the watercolorists among us go, yeah, you bunch of lame brains. You don't have to think at all. Right. So that's what makes this the quote-unquote final edit layers. I'm painting in opaque bits, so I get to edit out what I don't think looks very good. Does that make sense? That's what I mean by edit. I get to cover stuff up. I can tell you right now, the danger for me in this particular painting is going to be too many hard edges. That's I'm gonna have to fight against that the whole way, because I for some reason that's how my brain literally sees a forest like this. I see it as a forest of hard edges. And then somebody might say, well, go with it. That's how you see it, then go with it. And that's where experience as an artist pays off, because I say, even though that's the way I see it, I don't like paintings that do that. I like doing the painting, but the artists whose work I admire the most do not do that. So I want to paint, I want to do a good painting, I don't just want to paint what, so to speak, feels natural. What feels natural to me is all this little sparkly, edgy, hard edge stuff. That's what feels natural. But it's not the best way to paint, is what I'm saying. So I'm going to have to try to really be careful to incorporate lots of soft edges like I just did right there. Richard Schmid, I've got his book, Painting alla prima, everything I know about alla prima and more, or something like that. 2nd edition. I think I paid $130 for that book. It's crazy. I don't remember ever paying that much for a book before. Anyway, and I'm wading my way through it slowly. But he uses the term edge control. Again, this is Richard Schmid. I would say one of the pantheon of American painters. Pantheon, the insinuation there is he's one of the gods among us. He uses the term edge control. Edge control, edge control. I don't remember ever hearing that term before 4 or 5 years ago. I've since heard it many times, but the first time I remember hearing it, reading it, no doubt I heard it lots of times before and it just didn't stick. Anyway, that is, in my mind, a Richard Schmidism. Edge control. And it does indeed describe a major element in good painting, is knowing when to go hard, when to go soft. And it's way too easy to do too much. To do too much hard edge and not enough soft. So I'm saying that, hoping that I will listen to my own warning. I'm using just a little bit of liquid at this stage in the painting process. Really just enough to help the paint flow a little bit better. Not enough to make it transparent at all. Just a little bit for the paint to flow, that's all. In other words, I'm actually using a medium, liquid in this case, the way most oil painters or early journey painters anyway use their medium. They think that a medium is something that you add a little bit of it to your paint, which is what I'm doing now. I say many times, though, when you're painting transparent layers, as I do, I paint the opposite of that. You paint with lots of medium to which you've added just a tiny bit of paint, okay? That's how you get transparent. And again, when I talk about transparent paint, I'm not talking about the label that the manufacturer puts on the tube, letting you know whether this or that color is. No, I'm not referring to that at all. I'm referring to creating a transparent glaze by adding tons of medium to the paint. Welcome, and a number of new people speaking up. I appreciate that. I do indeed paint with two hands. I didn't start that until, I don't know, 10 or 12 years ago. I've started forcing myself. I said, it just seemed like a good idea to me. I read that Leonardo da Vinci painted with two hands, and I kind of looked around, and light bulb, the proverbial light bulb came on top of my head. And I said, is anybody paying attention here? Leonardo da Vinci painted with two hands. How come nobody else is painting with two hands? Well, I'm going to start because he was a pretty smart guy. Anyway, so that was one reason I started. The other reason I started, I was about 50 years old at the time, early 50s maybe. And I looked at old people. They say people, 65 years old or so, which is how old I am now. And I observed, brilliant child that I was, I observed that as people age, they tend to lose parts. Arthritis, bursitis, stroke, And so I said, well, dang, I'm going to start forcing my left hand to paint, just in case I lose my right hand, in case something happens and I can't paint, then I'll be all ready to go because my left hand will already be painting. So those were two silly reasons, in a way, relatively silly reasons to start painting with two hands. And when I started, my left hand, I cannot tell you how awkward. I was the most non-ambidextrous. Would that be monodextrous? I doubt it. Maybe. Anyway, I was the most right-handed person you can imagine. My left hand was completely, I mean, spastic is just about the only word for it. You know, proverbial couldn't walk and chew gum kind of thing. My left hand just couldn't do anything. Now, ironically, I played guitar with my left hand and played, you know, as a kid, played piano with my left hand. So evidently my left hand could do something. But anyway, I didn't know how to paint. And I started out by doing really stupid stuff like forcing my left hand to swish the brushes in the Gamsol, in the brush cleaner. And guess what? My left hand did not like doing that. And so I just told my left hand, shut up, because it was going, I don't want to do this, I don't like doing this. And I said, shut up, do it anyway. Then very shortly after that, probably maybe at the same time, I started forcing my left hand to gesso the canvas. And guess what my left hand said to me? I don't like doing this. And I said, shut up, left hand, gesso the canvas. And I started forcing my left hand to paint. And guess what? My left hand hated painting. It's like, I don't like this, I don't like this. That's why we have a right hand. We have a right hand so that I don't have to do this. That was my left hand talking. And I said, shut up, left hand, paint. So I just forced myself. It was uncomfortable as something. It was, I'm jumping ahead now, it was about 3 years later. 3 years, think about it. I know exactly where I was. I was painting at a festival in downtown Raleigh outside the Progress Energy building. And doing a 36 by 48 inch painting. Having a nice afternoon. And suddenly, I realized, wait a minute, I've been painting with my left hand for several minutes now, and I didn't even realize I was painting with my left hand. So that was a major breakthrough red letter day. That's the day I would, if I had to pick one, that was the day I became ambidextrous, because I was painting with my left hand and didn't even notice. But now let me go back in time a bit, because I have a very important addendum to that story. So even though my left hand griped and complained from day one all the way along, I don't like paint, I don't want to paint, I don't want to paint. And I forced my left hand to paint against its wishes. In spite of all that griping, listen to this, this is important. I now look back and realize that my painting nonetheless improved on day one. Even though my left hand was, in a sense, you could say completely useless as far as coordination and so forth. Even though my left hand was, again, essentially spastic and uncoordinated, nevertheless, my painting improved immediately on that day. So now and then I was teaching all through those years. You know, I used to be very nice to people, my students, and say, well, you know, I paint with two hands, but I'm weird, you don't need to, you know. But those days are over. Now I am mean. I say that, I hope, in jest. Because I, in fact, do push my students. I say, I can make you a better painter in 3 seconds. 1, 2, 3, paint with your left hand, or wrong hand if you're right-handed. And I absolutely believe it. And nowadays, I'm very likely to say, come on. Virtually every musician you know, and you know they might not be your best friends, but you know a lot of musicians. Every single one of them uses 2 hands. Nobody goes to a concert and says, golly, look at that piano player. He's using 2 hands. Think about it. That's absurd. Nobody does that. All right, I'm going to wipe these brushes off. I want to go up and do some of the sky up here near the top of this canvas. Right, I play guitar. I play trumpet. I don't use 2 hands all that much with trumpet, a little bit. 1st and 3rd valve slide. Most of you have no idea what I'm talking about. That's all right. But there you go. So if you want to be a better drawer or painter, people say, do you draw with 2 hands? The answer is yeah, most of the time. Now, wait. Let's be clear about something. When I'm doing super detailed, like when I do my wedding paintings, typically I'm doing realistic portraits. You can go to my website and see wedding paintings. Realistic portraits, their heads are this big. Okay, let's be clear that much of that time, much of that kind of detail, I am doing with my right hand. Okay, so that's an exception. But again, I don't consider that even my good painting. It's what needs to be done to get the job done. But it's not good painting per se. It's just realistic painting. All right, blue. Oh, I've run out of room on my palette. So here's my palette. Just glass with a backing board that I painted brown, and aluminum edge around it. I built it myself, of course. I suppose you could be an artist to not build your own equipment. I just don't know how you would do that. But my brain tells me, wait a minute, there's a lot of artists that are not builders. So evidently, some artists are doing it. But I'm a bit of an inventor, builder, designer, engineer type person, so I modify, build a lot of stuff. All of my easels are either built entirely by me or modified heavily. This is the least modified. This is essentially how the easel came, and I added a piece of 1/4 inch flat and then a 1/4 round in front of it, glued and nailed in place. So here, let me show you what I'm doing here, so that I can take a clipboard and slide it under it, and it's quite stable. I've been doing this for a couple years now. Never had any mishaps. So that puts my paint palette right in front of me. Then I added another board that goes up both ends. I got a hook here, a bag of rags, and my Gamsol Turpenoid down there, as you can see. Just, there you go, for what it's worth. Every once in a while somebody says, show us your easel. And this is the least modified of all my easels. And I am upstairs in my studio because we have grandchildren living with us. Very happily, by the way. I'm always hasten to add. They are looking for a house. Our daughter, husband, and 4 kids. They are looking pretty intently. But in the meantime, we're all pretty happy living in this house. They live upstairs. I have a very nicely appointed painting studio downstairs. When my wife went shopping for this house 12 years ago, she said, I want a house where the master bedroom's on the main floor
and where Dan can have a studio on the main floor. Isn't that nice? So that's what she found. She actually went out and found just what she was looking for. So I was very happily painting downstairs. I have a nice big electric Sonya easel down there. Nice tabaret to end all tabarets. That's a table with art supplies, you know. And it was all worked very, very well until our kids moved in. Ages now they are 3, 5, 7, and 9, and entirely too much noise in the house. I might be able to paint down there, but I would not be able to broadcast. So, so I had to buy another easel and bring it upstairs here to my, what was before that, my illustration studio. Forgive me, I know you guys, I repeat a lot of this stuff over and over and over. I know I'm painfully aware of that, but it's because every once in a while I get new people watching. And while they're watching, I am going to ramble on about something. So I try to ramble on about, why are you painting on that little easel? By the way, if you want a recommendation, this easel is distributed by Jerry's Artorama, and it's called the Carolina or the Carolinian. I don't know if it's a Carolina or the Carolinian. Probably written down here somewhere, but I don't want. Anyway, one or the other. Very inexpensive. I think it's on sale, and I just saw the other day for like $130. Quite inexpensive, and I'm quite pleased with it. And again, I build my own easels. I modify easels a great deal. And if you need an easy, not too heavy easel, it's basically an H-style easel. Well, yeah, it is basically an H-style easel with an adjustable center stem. So that's all I'm going to say about that. But just for what it's worth, yeah, I'm quite happy with it. Now, as you can see, as I told you, I've made modifications to mine. But can anybody say sky holes? and again, you know what? Hang on, I know what I'm going to do. I'm concerned that I'm getting too many hard edges here. So here's a trick for you. I employ this periodically. Kind of old, ratty, but bristle fan brush. Just, as you can see, just messing up, just softening stuff. It's kind of scary. Could you do this slowly? I don't think so. You'd chicken out if you try to do it carefully. Right. I'm happy to report that actually was quite effective. Just softened. I was pretty gentle right in here, but just softened everything just a little bit. Just gave it a fuzzy edge. Yay, that makes me happy. That was like a get out of jail free card right there. My brain is going, all right, Nelson, you know what you're doing, don't you? You know what you're doing, don't you? You're getting carried away with the hard edges. Richard Schmidt, Uncle Richard, would not approve. So there, I have just repented big time. of my too many hard edges. I can do that again, of course. I think I started to tell you guys a while ago and interrupted myself, as I usually do. ADD! I started to describe for you where I go after this final edit layer. All right? Oh, I think I did describe it. Okay, so I do broken color. Oh, that's as far as I got. I said broken color, and then I got interrupted. All right, so probably nobody who was listening back then or watching back then is watching anymore. So after this, I do broken color. That's all I'm going to say about it right now. And then I wait for the whole painting to dry. So whether it takes 1 day or 2 days at the most, because I'm using quite a bit of liquid. So this painting, as it is right now, this will all be thoroughly dry by tomorrow. Anyway, so wait a day, and then I do another glaze. That means transparent layer of transparent color, but plural colors, whatever colors I want, any colors I want. And that's quite important. That was good. I do glazes. And why? Well, because as you can see, much of what I'm putting on the canvas right now is opaque, right? And that's what the final edit is. It's opaque colors, opaque layers, right? And opaque colors are not as interesting, interesting as, hang on here, I'm trying to mix up just the right color, are not as interesting as transparent colors. So, here's one of my adages, an old adage, my old adage. Ain't a color made that don't look better with something else on top of it, okay? In other words, transparent colors are more interesting than opaque colors. So, after I've finished this final edit, I take a day, let the whole painting dry, 2 days if I need to, and then I glaze the whole thing, any colors I want. Like it's very conceivable to me. It's not appropriate for me to make this decision right now, but it's not hard to imagine that when I come back to this painting, say tomorrow or Sunday or Monday, that I might go, ooh, it's too green, too much green, right? I'm not making that judgment right now, but that would be a pretty typical response. So what will I do? Well, easy. Then I will anti-green it. I will de-greenify it, to use language common on our little channel here. I'll de-greenify it. What does that mean? I'll do red on top of the green. Transparent, you understand, and just very thin glaze, so it won't look like I've done red. It will just push the green back. And again, I'm not saying I'm going to do that, but I will say that would be a typical follow-up glaze stage to this. And then when I do that, all of the colors on this whole painting will, in just a few minutes, they will grow noticeably richer, more interesting. And then, usually after doing that second day glaze, I'll call it, then I'll do more of this, more, in a sense, final edit layer number 2 with opaque highlights. And the last thing I might do, and I can continue that process ad infinitum. I can do as many late glazes as I want. It'd be very unusual for me to do more than 2 late glazes. That's looking like trees up there, if you ask me. I think I'll save these blue brushes for later. I want to go up here into the focal point area of the painting. Stay in the sun. Looking for another smaller brush. I guess that'll do. Now that I've got more of this done, I realize that I can make that sunburst area lighter than it is. That's good. Making something lighter is so easy. It's a one-step process. And then, I'm sorry, then the final thing that this is a new addition to my toolbox. I realized just in the last month or two, people, human beings, we get a kick when we look at oil paintings. We get a kick out of impasto. We get a kick out of seeing thick little bits of paint, myself included. We like impasto. Most human beings do. And that is something I've not done a lot of, usually. So I've added a new final step. And that is using a palette knife to create an alternative, a variety of texture. I don't have to use a palette knife. I could use a brush. Like I'm actually doing some impasto right now. Can you see that? But it's fairly minimal. So I'm leaving myself room to come back and do more in the final stages. Anyway, and in particular, impasto with a palette knife. So why? Because variety is one of the highest values in painting. And the palette knife provides a texture at variance. Can I say it that way? Gives me an alternative texture to my painting. And simply the existence of that alteration is pleasant to us. I can see now I'm going to have to come back. And some of these trees that are in front of this bright sun, I want to do the Jeremy Sams thing. Those of you who are new to my channel, you get to know some of my friends, real friends. Jeremy Sams is a very successful young artist here in North Carolina. And if you simply Google him and look at the way he treats his shtick, if I may be so bold, is sun coming through trees. All right, so that's all I'm going to say. And he does it very well. So, and so now I sort of tongue-in-cheek, with a nod to my friend, say, I'm going to Jeremy Sam it. Jeremy, if you're ever here, if anybody knows him, somebody should tell him that, hey, do you know that Dan Nelson is using your name in vain over there on his YouTube channel? Please feel free to let him know. That would be great fun. Sam, I love you, man. You're an inspiration to us all, especially me, especially when I'm copying your refracted sunlight trick. The trick is that light, and you can see it here in the photograph. I don't know how well you can see that, but see there? That's light bending because of the atmosphere and bending around an object. It's a good trick. You know, our eye generally kind of gets a kick out of that. So that's what I'm doing here. I'm just giving our eyes a little fun. It's like, I want people to look at it and go, oh yeah, that is what happens when you look at all right, that's enough of that. Let's do. I really probably need to retreat here completely down to the bottom half of this painting. I've done almost nothing down there, so yeah, give me just a minute. Let's do just a little bit more up here. This is what I'm painting right now. This is a lake. Again, this painting is for my buddy. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to say that, buddy. It's for my friend Buddy up in Virginia. This is his path, his dog, his house, and there's a lake down here. So that's what that little warm reflection down there represents, that of water. All right, I'm going to take just a minute and raise this easel back up. As soon as I figure out how. Yeah. So that I can focus on the lower portion of the painting. I'd really, if my feet can stand it, I'd rather keep standing up for a while. I prefer standing up until my feet get sore, until my legs get sore. And then I prefer sitting down. Can anybody relate to that? Get that chair out of the way. Raise you guys up. Way up. All right. I'm going to stand across the room. I've been looking at this painting way up close for whatever it's been, an hour and a half now. I am not going to try to record, because I think it's getting to be just a little bit long, too much. I'm not going to try to broadcast my entire final edit layer, stage, phase on this painting, because I think it's just getting too long in the tooth, shall we say. But I'll do just a few more minutes down here. A lot of my effort in the final edit layer is spent mixing color to match what's already in the painting. If I've done the underpainting, by the way, this is the first layer that I don't call underpainting. This is finally overpainting, if you will. Most people don't use that term, but I do, because it's such a, I hold such a strong distinction between over and underpainting. But I spend a lot of time and effort just matching what's already on the canvas. And indeed, I'm doing that right now. I mix up a batch of something that's slightly lighter than what's already here. So I'm not, so to speak, inventing stuff wholesale. Does that expression communicate to you? Yeah, just hitting now the top of Ellie's head, which means it's a good idea to grab this photo of Ellie again. Look at this now. Look at how I'm holding the brush. That is the death control grip, folks. So indeed, there's a place for that, but it's not the norm. In fact, most of the time, honestly, I do finish an entire painting, never holding my brush in that manner, except for my signature. So it's a little bit unusual for me to do any of the painting in that manner. Not apologizing, but just want to be clear for you, anybody who's trying to be influenced by me. Almost all, 99.99% of my painting is done not with the point of the brush, but with the blade, with the side of the brush. All right, and I've got this fan brush right ready to go here. There. Even what it did to Ellie there, I'm pretty much okay with. I'm going to clean it up just a tiny bit. But that actually worked out very well. I softened the edge around her head. It makes it much more believable. She was feeling like a cutout. She still is, but it's much better now. All right, and add some Scarlet Lake and some transparent red oxide, which of course is a brown, and continue doing some of this pine straw, they call it here in North Carolina. I don't know how far afield that terminology extends. I grew up in Michigan. There was lots of, we called it pine needles. And we lived many years in Texas. There they called it pine needles. But here in North Carolina, it's called pine straw. It's actually a very useful term. And as I said yesterday, they actually, nurseries and things like that will actually sell bales of pine straw for gardeners and homeowners to create their beds with underneath their trees. And pine straw is also very acidic, and one of the most beautiful flowers in this part of the country is the azalea, and azaleas love an acidic soil, so pine straw works very well if you want your azaleas to bloom in all their glory in the spring. A little bit of horticulture yesterday, folks. Step right up here. You never know into. Not a very chatty group today. That's perfectly fine. You're more than welcome to just sit there and spy on us without, without saying anything. We don't know who you are, but we know you're there. Thanks for joining us. I sounded like Bob Ross for a second there, didn't I? I'm getting down close to the corner, down close to the bottom of the painting, close to the corner. Therefore, my strokes are getting more and more abstract. Whoops. There we go. Okay, I'm going to stop there, I think. That's probably a good place for me to end this broadcast as well. It's been going on. I've been droning on for hours. Actually, I don't know how long it's been. I'll know as soon as I turn it off. It'll tell me how many minutes I've been going. But I got quite a bit done. Again, this is by far the slowest stage phase layer of my painting process is this final edit, because I'm having to make real decisions, editing kind of decisions all the way along. And I would love, if I have time, I'd love to come back and do broken color in here, so that this would be all dry. I could glaze it tomorrow, but we'll see. Anyway, I'm going to end that right there. Thank you for your chats and comments and your company. And if I start doing anything exciting. Now, the next thing I'm going to do is this other painting. I'm doing 2 paintings in tandem here this week, the last couple days, and I'll be doing that one next, final edit layer on that one. And if I'm doing anything interesting, I will certainly start broadcasting again. Okay, thanks. Bye.